the roll.
One moment. Barbara Marshman.
Here.
Christine Johnson.
Here.
Elizabeth Fawnley. Ellie Matsamura. Enrico Callender. Frank Maidsky.
Here.
Garrick Percival. George Sanchez. Hui Tran.
Here.
Jeremy Bruce.
Here.
Jose Posadas.
Here.
Lund Diep. Linda Lizotte. Luis Barrocio. Magnolia Siegel.
Present.
Maria Fuentes. Oh, I see her on the other side. I'll move her over. Maria Fuentes. Hi, Maria. I see you joined. We're calling roll at the moment. Would you be able to affirm your attendance?
I'm sorry. Here.
Thank you. And I see Elizabeth Monley has joined us.
Here.
Thank you. Sammy Robledo.
Present.
Sherry Segura. P. Tran. Tobin Gilman. Veronica Amador.
Present.
Thank you. Yong Zhao.
Here.
Thank you. And Frederick Ferrer. Oh, I see George Sanchez has just joined us as well. You have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight we will hold a study session on the topic of housing. I know that in the agenda it said Title 19, and the reason for that is because that is where housing issues are addressed in the charter. We will also have public comment at the end of the final presentation this evening. Our guest speakers are Sandy Perry, Michael Henshaw, Melanie Griswold, Jackie Rivera, and Andrea Portillo. Thank you for joining us this evening. Sandy Perry is our first guest speaker. Would you like to begin, Sandy?
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me. I am president of the Affordable Housing Network. It's actually the oldest affordable housing organization in San Jose and in Santa Clara County. We were founded in 1987, and we've always been dedicated to organizing the people in need of affordable housing, both tenants and also unhoused and sometimes homeowners, to advocate for themselves, which is a little bit different model from some of the other less grassroots organizations which are out there now. Wanted to talk about the housing crisis from a number of points of view. First of all, everybody is aware of the homeless crisis in San Jose and in Santa Clara County, and actually in all of California. But this is a little chart which the housing department came up with, which shows that every time they house one unhoused person, 2 or almost 3 new people become unhoused. And that's been kind of since even before the pandemic. That's been the big challenge for people addressing the homelessness issue, because we have a very large nonprofit sector. We have Measure A, a lot of funds that are dedicated to housing the homeless. But every time we succeed, in fact, I think it can be said that we've actually housed the unhoused population in San Jose and in Santa Clara several times over, but more people continue to become homeless. And I think part of the problem is that we don't go deep enough into the issue to figure out why that is. The latest homelessness count in 2019, that's the last time there was an official count, which was before the pandemic, which everybody knows made things much worse. Before the pandemic, homelessness rose by 42% in San Jose between 2017 and 2019. The other problem, which is very closely related to homelessness, is displacement. The city pulled together with an organization called Policy Link. They pulled together an anti-displacement, forget the exact name of it, but they had a policy team, which was a joint effort by the housing department in San Jose and a bunch of and some nonprofit leaders, including the Law Foundation, Working Partnerships, Somos Mayfair, and others. And they came up with a study which was released in January 2020. And although they were not able to get specific statistics for San Jose, they cited a study by the Turner Center, which says that from 2010 to 2016, 1.5 million residents moved out of the Bay Area. 1.5 million. That's just a huge number of people that were forced out of the Bay Area. And it said that there were some high-income residents that moved out for various reasons, career change or whatever. But for every one high-income resident that moved out, 6 low-income residents moved out, which indicates that it's a economic issue of people not being able to afford to live in the Bay Area. And obviously Silicon Valley is right in the middle of that problem. Latino and African American communities were disproportionately affected. And there's a lot of research that goes into breaking down by neighborhoods in San Jose, that it actually, I believe the city study, this came from the city gave the housing department prepared a report to the city council back in September 2020, where they talked about, I believe there's the highest areas of highest displacement. There's something like a 85% overlap between those areas and the areas that were redlined back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it's very much of an issue of racial inequities in San Jose. And it's the Latinx population, the Black population, and Asian American populations are disproportionately impacted by displacement. The third problem, the third angle which I want to come at is from the point of view of home ownership, which there was an article in the Spotlight, and I apologize, I didn't have time to put together a PowerPoint to make these figures more available to you. But how much income do you need to buy a home in San Jose? More than $240,000 a year. And that's assuming that you can put down a 20% down payment, which is somewhere around well, I can't 20%. The average home price is 1.4 million. So you're talking about $250,000. If you can save up $250,000 and then you have an income of around $250,000 a year, you can afford to buy the median priced home in San Jose. And this makes vast numbers of people, and especially obviously low income communities, completely, it's inaccessible to people. People cannot buy homes. And so the question that comes up is what to do about this. And a lot of that depends on what values we have in the San Jose values generally. And San Jose is not united on this. But in general, we believe that there's a problem, that it's a problem when people who work here can't afford to live here, that it's a problem when people become homeless. It's a problem when there's a shortage of minimum wage workers. And actually, I believe that certainly the Affordable Housing Network believes, and I believe the majority of people in San Jose believe that housing is a human right. But that's not true of everybody. I've been involved in a lot of rent control struggles over the last 5 or 8 years in San Jose. And a lot of the public comments during those, I've heard landlords say that we don't have an affordable housing problem in San Jose because all my apartments, I rent them at market rate, and there's renters for all of them, so they can afford them. And there is a view that that the market works, and if people can't afford the rent that the market decides, then they don't have a right to live in San Jose. And there's a lot of people who have said, and this is also a lot of the public comments you hear around homelessness, that if people can't afford the rent here, they should move. And there's a lot of reasons why people don't move, having to do with family, connections, history, work, church. People are part of communities. People who become unhoused are part of our community as much as everybody else. And we can't just banish them like that and expect that's going to solve the problem. And in fact, if you look at the unhoused population, you'll see that people do not leave. People don't move away. There's some, and the displacement figures talk about that, but there's also a significant number of people who lose their housing and continue to stay in the area. And the other problem with those types of attitudes is that we end up without having any low-income workers or even median income workers. I think San Jose, we lost our president of the NAACP in San Jose, who finally gave up and moved to Atlanta, to a place where he could afford to buy a home. And he couldn't buy a home in San Jose. So it gets back to the question of solutions. And I'll try to make this fairly quick. There's obviously we need funding. If you look at the statistics for production of affordable housing, you can look at them in relation to the mayor's 5-year plan to create 10,000 affordable housing units. After 3 of the 5 years have gone by, he's only 30% of the way toward his goal. The RENA figures, which are the goals that were set by the Bay Area Association of Bay Area Governments for San Jose, they were set, we're 3/4 of the way through that time period, and we've only reached 21%. So we're drastically short on our production of affordable housing. There's several reasons for this. One is funding. Obviously, we need to pass the Building Back Better on the federal level, and actually quite considerably more than that is necessary. We need to take a good look at our general plan. Our general plan, based on study that I've done, it calls for 382,000 jobs and 120,000 housing units. And that does not add up if you look at it. And in fact, if you do all the math that's connected with those figures, that's going to create a housing shortage for some 400,000 people in San Jose that are not going to have a place to live if that many jobs end up being created in that few jobs. 400,000 people, they're going to either be displaced or they're going to have to commute here from outside. And there isn't any other place in the Bay Area that's producing that kind of housing. They're going to have to commute from the Central Valley, which creates all kinds of transportation and environmental problems. Basically, I think we need to have a paradigm shift. The current housing structure is simply not working in America. Anytime you have this many homeless all across the country, really, a lot of it's concentrated in California, but it's also a problem in other places. The situation's not working. And I think we have to have new ways of looking at the problem. There's a bill that was introduced in Sacramento to create a social housing department in the state of California with the idea of beginning to decommodify housing. I mean, there is a real problem when you have real estate industry is based, the entire industry is structured on increasing property values, increasing home prices. That just conflicts completely with the goal of having affordable housing for every person. It just doesn't work. And the figures in San Jose prove that it doesn't work. So there has to be a new way of approaching housing, and the idea of social housing, it's not the same as affordable housing, because actually affordable housing based on the low income tax credit is not really affordable. And because the federal definition of affordability has always been 30% of income. The other problem with the current situation is that it kind of creates a political gridlock where homeowners actually have an interest in not increasing housing production, and renters obviously have an interest in increasing it very rapidly. And so it creates kind of a political standoff, which is another factor which leads to our housing crisis. So we support a new model. It's social housing. It's worked in places like Singapore, Vienna, and it's a form of public housing, but it's mixed income. Public housing failed in America because it was restricted to the very poor, again, by the real estate industry, and it was segregated, both racially and economically. So we believe in a new model of housing, the decommodification of housing. One step toward that is a community land trust, or they also have limited equity cooperative housing. And I believe somebody else is going to present on that a little later on in the study session. We have a policy before City Council right now. It's called Coppa, Community Opportunity to Purchase, where tenants would actually have an opportunity either themselves or through a nonprofit to purchase a building when it comes up for sale. Nobody's going to be forced to sell. Nobody has to sell below market. But when a property comes up for sale, tenants would have an opportunity to purchase that. And on some of the models, the cooperative models or the community land trust, they could actually become a homeowner. So I'm trying to keep within my time limit here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. And now we're going to move into the Q&A portion. And I know Sandy does have a hard stop at 5:55. I see Commissioner Segal.
Hi, thank you so much for coming and speaking to us. That was really very kind of you to do. I know that in Marin County, there is a model where people can enter a lottery if they're under a certain income bracket. They enter a lottery, and the first pick are teachers and firefighters, folks that actually live in Marin County. And the reason is Marin has always had a problem of being able to house its teachers and firefighters because they just, they can't afford to live in Marin County. So they've always had to live somewhere else, cross a bridge, somewhere in the East Bay. And so first choice would go to them. And then after that, it would be the general public who already live in Marin, who've never been homeowners, and they can enter the lottery as well. The caveat is when they sell, it can only be a certain percentage above, what they bought it for. So they could make a profit, but it won't be very much. And I don't know what the rate is. It could just be the rate of inflation or something like that. Is anything like that happening that you're aware of in our county here?
No, I haven't heard of anything like that happening here. And I'm not sure I would call that a solution, a lottery. I mean, the number of opportunities are so few and far between. I'm not sure a lottery, it's not going to solve the problem. It might allow a few more city workers to get to the head of the line, but the shortage is so great that that's certainly not going to impact the problem. As far as the idea of only being able to sell at a rate similar, at an increase similar to the rate of inflation, that's actually how home ownership in a CLT, community land trust, works, and a limited equity cooperative. That and the idea is that you can be a homeowner, but it's not going to be like an investment where you can make a fortune the way a traditional homeowner in Silicon Valley tends to expect. It's a way where you can have security, housing, you can have control over your environment. You can't be evicted, but it's not a path to. There's some wealth, like you said, but it's not a path to making a fortune the way owning a home otherwise can be in Silicon Valley sometimes.
We have Commissioner Barussi, Monley, Marshman, and Shao.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chair. And thank you, Sandy, for presenting tonight. It's really great to see you again. I just wanted to see if, in that vein, if you might be able to expand a little bit on the mixed income housing model that you talked about that's currently being implemented in Singapore and Vienna. Would you be able to expand a little bit on that model?
Well, the idea is that, and again, public housing in the United States has gotten a really bad rap because it's been underfunded. It's been because of the real estate industry, and this goes all the way back to the 1930s. Housing was not allowed to be offered to middle class people, to people with a moderate income, and as a result, the housing tended to concentrate, and also, as I mentioned, it was racially segregated, almost always, not 100% of the time, but almost always it ended up being racially segregated. And as a result, it created division, it created problems, it really messed up the housing movement. The housing movement was really divided for years by the policies of segregation, and it failed. Public housing, to a large, not complete, because actually you'd be surprised to know there's a lot of very successful public housing developments right here in Santa Clara County. But in a lot of areas it failed, and that's the reason it failed. And so, for example, in Singapore, I heard a presentation from a resident of Singapore a couple of months ago who talked about the housing there. It is mixed income, and although the government owns the building, people are empowered to be able to buy their own apartment, and people can be homeowners there. It was deliberately integrated. Singapore has a lot of different ethnicities, Chinese, and people from all over Southeast Asia are there. And so they actually deliberately integrated them so that it wouldn't create enclaves and be divisive. So, and it also helps the housing pay for itself. If you have more moderate income people in there, and it's mixed in with the poorest people.
Thank you.
Commissioner Monley?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question for clarification. When you spoke about the tenant opportunity to purchase, did you say Coppa or Topa?
Well,
They're two different things.
they are two different things.
Which one?
Tenant opportunity, TOPA is Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, and people are going to be talking about this more later on. COPA is Community Opportunity to Purchase, and it's a little bit broader. I think in San Jose, we're trying to include tenants as part of the community. The tenants would be part of that, but also community organizations could be part of that, and where the community organizations and the tenants work together. So it's both.
So I just wondered which one. I thought I heard you say COPA, and
I did. I said COPA with a C.
Yeah,
COPA.
it is different. So, okay. So well, I agree. You know, many years ago, and I have to say, I'm a member of SCORE, and we are all over fair housing. We're making amends for the entire country who deliberately redlined people from buying. So I just want to say that, but I also need to say that I think that we have laws and we are putting laws in place now to prevent that from ever happening again. And I mean, it was recipients of the New Deal all the way to housing and everything. So you couldn't get an FHA loan if you were Black. You couldn't get a VA loan if you were Black. So I just want to, establish that the real estate industry is not all about just raising people's property values. We believe in housing for all and trying to find a way to generate it as well. So just my 2 cents.
Okay, we respectfully disagree.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Unfortunately, I guess I can do one more question, then I have to go.
Okay, thank you so much, Sandy. Commissioner Marshman, yours is going to be the last question.
Most of my question has been answered, so I'm going to pass to someone else.
Commissioner Zhao?
Sandy, I thank you for spending the time here. I have a couple of questions, and first of all, I would like to say you're right. Public housing is not that great because as a first generation immigrant, I grew up in public housing in a communist country, so I know how it failed. I hope we're not talking about that anymore. So you mentioned that you are a nonprofit. So I'm just wondering if your organization have ever tried to purchase any buildings from the open market in the past.
Well, my organization is the Affordable Housing Network. We have not been in the business of purchasing housing. We're advocates and we're organizers. So we're not actually in the business of providing housing. There's a lot of affordable housing providers out there that do. And South Bay Community Land Trust, for example, who's going to be presenting later, they do that. And or they're, let's put it this way, they aspire to be able to do that. So they can address that more. I'm really not in a position to address that myself. And I'm sorry, I really have to run, unfortunately. So thank you all so much for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Just a reminder to the commissioners, please keep it focused on the questions. We have a tight agenda today, and I want to make sure that we follow through with that. Thank you. So our next guest speaker will be Michael Henshaw. Michael, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Michael Henshaw. I work with Marcus and Millichap. We are an investment real estate firm. I've been with the firm since 1997. I'm a local resident. I was born and raised. I was born in San Jose, grew up in Sunnyvale. I've been selling multifamily apartment buildings since 1997. I've seen, just to give you an overview of what I've seen market swings that have benefited landlords and they've hurt landlords. And, currently, the landlords are coming off a couple of tough years. And I say that because, when COVID hit, the landlords immediately suffered 20% vacancy and their rents went down 20 to 25%. And, the rents have come back some, and the nadir was probably this past March. But talking to owners that, own and manage in downtown San Jose right now, they don't have any leasing activity whatsoever. There's just the people that have come back to the jobs are here, and we expect there to be another surge of potential renters returning. But, currently, the landlords are suffering, and I can say that. As far as the marketplace right now, you've got 52 buildings that are currently on the MLS as of this afternoon. The average market time of days on market is 56 days. Things that hit the market are selling anywhere between 5 to 10%. And I've queried my colleagues that I know that are listing agents, and I've asked them the direct question and said, if you received an offer from a nonprofit, would you sell the building? They've said yes, most certainly. I don't think you have to necessarily, make it a first right of refusal. If the price and terms are met, and right now, and I see this for the foreseeable future, it's going to be an equilibrium market between buyers and sellers, and you're not going to have a competitive upswing in prices because we have substantial headwinds on the horizon. The headwinds being you're going to have some sort of increase in interest rates, which will keep values depressed. At the same time, you've got supply that's still coming online at the same time. And the other thing is, we don't know when everybody's going to return. So when I look at the market, and I have represented buyers and sellers for my whole career, we're at equilibrium right now. I mean, it's a good time to be a seller. It's a good time to be a buyer. Are the sellers getting the asking price they want? No, they're probably within 5 to 10%. Are the buildings selling in 1 to 2 days? No, it's more like 1 to 2 months. And I know this from currently. I mean, I've closed a transaction on South 13th Street that closed at the end of September, and I have another property closing on South 7th Street, which closes at the end of the week. One of them's 11 units, one of them's 14 units. I think that part of this problem right now is on the supply side, and I think that one of the things that the city needs to do is look top down and say, how can we make it easier to build housing? Okay. I mean, what can we do to make it easier to build housing, build good housing, but also how can we earmark it for the affordable housing builders to actively participate? And whether it's going to be in the form of some sort of financing or subsidies or grants to create more housing, to make the market fairer for the tenants as far as keeping the rents, competitive. The studies have shown, when you go to other cities that don't have rent control, whether you're Boston or Chicago, and I lived in Chicago, there's a lot of housing there, and it's an affordable city for a young person. It's an affordable setting for a working class person. It works. Boston got rid of rent control. Seattle, they have some tenant protections, but the state of Washington in their constitution does not allow rent control. And I've done transactions up there as well. So I've seen different places that have it. Adding more restriction and more government, I think all it does is it just makes the government get bigger. If you're going to spend money and make the government bigger, I don't think you should add people to necessarily police a program or have a program. You may look on the different side and do what Austin has done. Austin has created an affordable housing agency that basically has money. They loan it to affordable housing developers. They take the interest payments and they use it to loan out again for more affordable housing. What I'm saying is we have to be forward thinking and say, how can we, the reality is we need more housing. That's a certainty. That's a conclusion. It's evident, but you have to make it easier to create it. Taking the older landlords that, whether they have a 4-plex or an 8-unit building and it's their life savings. And I know a lot of people that own a couple buildings, their net worth is a couple $1 million, but they've saved every single penny. And, their idea of a luxury is having a second, ice cream cone at McDonald's. and these are people that I interact with regularly. So they're not, wealthy fat cats. They're not. I think that making it easier for the affordable groups to be competitive in the marketplace is another thing that should be looked at. And whether you take the housing department and you create a couple people that are able to oversee the acquisition process. And that's one of the flaws, is that some of the nonprofits are extremely good at providing emergency housing to, a myriad of types of needs, right? Whether it's domestic abuse survivors, it's homelessness, it's a whole bunch of things. They're great at those services, but they may not be particularly great on the acquisition side. And that's something that you definitely want to look at and say, how do we make the process smoother? And, because anytime you put restrictions in, all of a sudden people push back. If it's a free market, they're going to sell their buildings, and affordable housing people will buy them. In the county of San Mateo, there was a large transaction, 104 units, that transacted in the city of Pacifica. A nonprofit group bought that, and believe it or not, they're going to add 54 ADUs to that property. So they went in, it's low density, they're going to add the units, and it's a win-win for everybody. There's been several nonprofit transactions in Redwood City recently as well. So, the money's there, the transactions happen. I just think we have to be forward thinking. I'll conclude at this point so we have plenty of time for questions, and also to make sure we get on schedule for the next speaker after me. So the floor is open to ask me questions.
Okay, thank you. We will now take questions from commissioners. I have Commissioner Calendar, Barussi, Monley, Segal, and Tran.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair. I just wanted to, good evening, Vice Chair. I just wanted to note that I was here for the record.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Barussi, did you have a question? Okay, not hearing from Commissioner Barussi yet. Commissioner Monley, oh, your hand's down. Commissioner Tran.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And just a quick point of clarification. Can we present just tonight specifically on Coppa or just generally housing?
I believe it's generally housing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being present, Mr. Henshaw. I have some questions just to lay some foundation for our discussion here. Just as a first point, I want to make sure we understand that we all understand here, right? That pricing, as a general matter, is a function of supply and demand. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
and
supply and demand, but it's also a function of income of the current assets, both the in-place income and what the market rents would be. And that's going to be a factor of the outlying of what currently is going on with interest rates. So there's a couple things that go into there. Yes.
Sure. Okay. Now, and you did mention income, and that's actually something I want to tap on too. But just to clarify first, when you refer to income, are you talking about the income that is generated by the property that is put up for sale, or just the income of the potential buyer?
Basically, the income is, when I look at any 5-unit building and larger is going to be underwritten for any sort of lender purposes based upon the income that the property supports. So the buyer's financials are going to be less of a concern versus the in-place income. So the reality is most of the transactions I'm talking about, we're talking about the income of the property.
Okay, thank you. So just then as a general point though, in terms of pricing, where we have basic principles, supply, demand, and if there's limited supply and high demand, prices go up, right? General matter.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we have buyers though, who have very different, let's say, resources, right? That then you have a limited number, you have a smaller core of people or a smaller core of, let's say, entities that are able to buy the properties as the demand goes up. Is that right?
I wouldn't say that necessarily is a direct correlation. Okay. I would not say for sure that is a direct correlation.
Meaning that you're saying that there's no clear evidence or clear support for the idea that if a price goes higher, only people with more money can buy?
No, actually, if the price goes higher, there's going to be a finite point where nobody will buy it. Okay,
Right.
because the underlying economics will not support the acquisition at that price.
But
And
so long as there are entities who are willing to pay the price for a high priced commodity, the price can
Okay.
continue to increase, right?
okay, when you look at a high price commodity, it's whether it's a nonprofit or it's an individual investor, or it's a group that have sold, say they sold 200 acres of land in the Central Valley, and now they have to, they have to place the money because of an exchange. Anybody looking at that, particular building is going to underwrite it and say, if I put a down payment of 35 to 40%, will I make any money? And if the price is too high, they will not make any money and they will not pay it. So what I'm saying is, when I earlier said the market's at equilibrium, I'm looking at both I'm looking at what the buyers are looking at and both the sellers. Okay.
Right, but you're talking about the market in terms of a buyer making a value judgment as to whether or not an investment makes sense. My point is much simpler. As prices go up, the pool of potential buyers shrink, right?
No, because if there's a direct increase in the income for pricing, then all things would be the same. Okay. If the price increases but the income remains constant, yes, buyer demand goes down. But if the price goes up and the income goes up, the demand stays constant.
So you're saying that if the potential income revenue, the potential income that can be created by a property up for sale matches the price and increase, then you keep the same number, then you keep your pool the same size.
Okay, if the underwriting remains constant as far as the yield and the cap rate and what the pricing is, all things considered, you're going to have the same number of buyers. Okay.
Right. I think you're kind of getting deeper into the weeds than what my question is intending, right? Because
Okay.
I'm talking about market. I'm just trying to basically lay out here market forces or market drivers, and not necessarily get into a buy sell kind of analysis, right? The reason why I'm trying to focus here on the broader aspect here is because a lot of the proposals that are being considered, and not just by the Charter Review Commission, but just generally speaking, when we're talking about housing policy, is how we allow people who can't afford or cannot keep up with the ever-increasing prices of rent or house prices, to be frank, either way, how do we provide them an opportunity to be provided shelter, right? To be provided a basic fundamental need, for people, right? Because when you live out in the streets, everything else gets a heck of a lot harder. So that's as we consider proposals around housing, we aren't necessarily, treating every transaction as if, hey, if you create a property that can generate income, you keep a pool of buyers ready to go, doesn't really answer the basic question of how do we ensure that people who need a place to stay get one. And I think ultimately that's where a lot of the proposals that we are considering try to go directly to that answer and try to answer that question directly. So this is kind of where I also wanted to clarify my original question about whether we are focused on Coppa or if we're focused on general housing policy, because I do believe that there is a reaction to the comments that we've heard that are specific to Coppa, but can also be brought up generally more on housing, right? Which is, the free market serves people who can afford the available units. It doesn't serve the people who necessarily need it.
I would have to disagree when you say the free market, because if you increase supply, the intersection of equilibrium would theoretically, all things considered, would actually drop down. Okay. So if you were to add 5,000 units, you're going to actually increase affordability because of the supply side. Now, whether those are going to be subsidized or not, I mean, that's one of the drivers that, is, needs to be discussed as far as proposals, is how to build more to make it, what you're saying, how do you have more housing available to everybody? You have to build more. Okay.
Sure.
I mean,
I don't think that's in doubt. I don't think that's in doubt that we have to build
Yeah.
more housing, right? That's the supply side for sure. But considering that we have struggled to build 25,000 units over the past 5 years, that has been the goal. And we have actually enacted policies that loosened up some of the restrictions already,
Mhm.
such as the Ellis Act restrictions. We haven't seen the turnaround, especially when we're looking at affordable housing, because we've hit every benchmark. We've exceeded every benchmark for market rate housing that we have set for ourselves.
Mhm.
Where we have drastically failed is in producing affordable housing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you have to push that directive or that plan forward in whatever shape or form you can, because if you want more affordable housing, you have to encourage the people to build it. And the builders don't care, what they build, right? Because they're going to get paid, and this, so it becomes, you have to empower other nonprofits to build more.
Right. I believe Coppa does that, though, right? But that's it. I'll relinquish my time so that we can
Okay.
share with others.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Barrusi, Zhao, and Fuentes.
I think I just left my hand up from last time. Sorry about that.
Commissioner Zhao.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I know you are mainly on the buying and selling side. So my question is, are you familiar with a policy that the San Jose has, which called Inclusion Housing Ordinance?
When I say inclusion housing, I didn't get the rest of it.
Yeah, the in lieu fee or something.
Yeah, the in lieu fee usually, if I'm not mistaken, when you build a market rate housing project, the city tells you, requests that there be a certain percentage of the units to be affordable housing and a certain income level. And what has happened in the past, and it's not unique to San Jose, is that the developers have opted to pay the fee and not build the affordable units. Well, they're looking at the economics and saying, we can pay this fee and we can make it up on the back end, because if we pay 100,000, but the unit that we create is worth 800,000, we've just, it's simple economics. Yes, I am familiar with it.
I see. Thanks. So it looks like when a new project a developer is applying for a project for, let's say, 100 units, they have two ways of doing that. One is pay the city a so-called in lieu fee, or they have to set aside a portion of the 100 units to be a certain income restricted housing. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay, so that, I think, it answers some of my questions regarding how affordable housing needs to be built. It's the matter of the whether it's 5% or 50% or 90%. I guess each Bay Area cities have their own numbers, right?
That is correct, yes.
So I know it seems like San Francisco probably have the highest. I heard it's 26 or 27-ish. And San Jose maybe in the middle layer of something.
Yeah, and Mountain View's close to 25%. I think that, I don't want to tell you how to change policy, but it would be evident that if the developer is paying the in lieu fee, they're just looking at the overall economics, and that's a more palatable solution for them as far as getting their project done. And I think that if you increase the percentage or you increase the fee, you may have a happy medium to where they may, decide that they are going to build the affordable units. The other caveat is that you could allow them, you could incentivize the developer to get greater density. And I've seen this in other projects in San Mateo, to where, you may say, look, we want 20% affordable. We're going to give you an extra 10% to build this, but you're going to grant us a use agreement so that these units are going to be affordable for the duration of the project. Not just, not 10, 20 years, but you make the lifetime. Now, I mean, developers are not going to want to hear me say this, but you've got to be creative for a win-win. And I mean, you've got to, look at it long-term. And I think that's a solution.
Yeah, thank you. I've also seen some cities that they allow to increase density or waiving the parking requirements or sorts just to replace for more affordable housing.
Yep.
Yeah. So my next question would be, are you familiar with Coppa?
I am very familiar with Coppa. I've participated in a lot of the, Zoom meetings for the last probably 5 or 6 months. I'm familiar with it. Yes. Okay.
So you have a general idea how Coppa works. Would you mind, because we're mainly probably talking about the apartment buildings, whether it's a duplex or it's a units. So would you mind talk us through if the buyer or the seller is in a 1031 exchange, then what would happen to them?
Anytime you've got one party in a 1031 exchange, there's a strict timeline that both the buyer and the seller would have to adhere to. The 1031 exchange basically says when you sell an investment property, you have 45 days to identify up to 3 properties, and a subsequent 135 days, or a total of 180 days to close on one of those properties, and you can defer your capital gains. Often what happens is that when somebody is in their person has sold their property and they're in their identification period, they're very nervous and they are going around writing unsolicited offers very aggressively because they need to find a place they need something to buy. So how does it affect it as far as Coppa? The only way that Coppa works is that the buyers that are selected under Coppa need to be really fast moving. They need to be high functioning. They need to be able to make decisions quickly to compete with the marketplace. Because if you're competing against a buyer who's, has a lot of capital gains, he will want to move fast. We need to be able to prepare the buyers to also be able to compete. And that's part of it, I guess, because the exchange is a big factor. The other, so I hope that's explained a little bit about the 1031 exchange. I mean, certainly the 1031 exchange can be dealt with Coppa. It can. You just want to make sure that the buyers, the affordable buyers are competitive.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Fuentes and then Monley. Oh, Commissioner Fuentes, you are mute.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say thank you and to welcome you, Mr. Henshaw. You're really helping and educate us in this area so that we can move forward and see what we can do to help our community in the charter. My question, I just wanted to know more. You mentioned Chicago and a place where it's affordable for the young people as well as for all workers. Tell us more about Chicago and how, whatever you know, how it got to be, or how it is that it's in a good position.
I think that they, living there, I lived there for 5 years, and for whatever reason, nobody ever was griping about how high their rent was. I can just say that. I mean, all different walks of life. And I remember, God, I rented a 3-bedroom, 1-bath flat, and this was before I moved back here. It was $800. And it had a parking spot. It was in a nice neighborhood. And so I just think that anytime, it was a free market. You know what I'm saying? It was a free market. There was not any regulations. Landlords did not take, everybody got along. It was a fair market. That's what I would say. I didn't, now, the one component to the Chicago market was that the affordability gap between owning and renting was a lot smaller than it is in the Bay Area. That's for sure. But you still had all walks of life being able to live in different places. So, and they do have a Coppa program, I understand, and the only buyer for that is the city of Chicago. So, I'm a little bit familiar. So.
Any more about, well, let me ask this a different way. What do you think would be the best steps our city could take to go more toward that direction you just described? Because in fact, I think I remember, decades ago where our city was similar, that both were affordable in our community. So how do we?
I think that one of the things that has always frustrated, developers, and is in California, but even the Bay Area, it's, the entitlement process is 2, 3, 4 years sometimes, and that's an eternity. And what it does is it drives up the cost of construction, which ultimately drives up. It just makes it very expensive. We do have expensive wages and materials and all those things, but when the entitlement process is that lengthy, it becomes extremely frustrating for the developers. And I think you've got to figure out, how do you build more housing? And how do you encourage, how do you encourage apartment owners to renovate units and charge a fair rent? But at the same time, the tenants feel like they're, getting a fair deal, and it's a happy medium, right? What you don't want is what has happened in San Francisco, where landlords, they take units off the market because they want to wait till the rents come back so they can get a higher base rent. I think that is counterproductive. Okay. That's just doesn't work. So.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Commissioner Monley?
Yes, thank you so much for coming by and speaking to us. So Coppa, if I understand correctly, isn't about the creation of affordable housing. Coppa is actually more of a program for real estate transactions. Isn't that right? Like doesn't seem that it has been discussed that this is a right for specific nonprofits to be able to make an offer and purchase property before it ever goes on the market, or if it goes on the market, have a right of first refusal if they can't match a market price of another buyer, all of this extending market time. Is that right? Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that you can lose buyers for properties that way. You can lose market time, and you're not really creating during that affordable housing in any way. It's sort of a program that the city of San Jose seems to not even be ready to discuss at the city council level yet. They're just finding out about it and discovering it through other cities. San Francisco has had the program for 2 years and have only sold 5 properties, right? That way. Yeah. And Washington, D.C. was the model for San Francisco, which is now the model for San Jose. And Washington, D.C. has modified their program because they're having such problems with it. And Berkeley is sitting on it. They're refusing to vote on it at the city council level. Is that all right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. That is my understanding. And I just, I'm concerned about something that slows the market down or creates anything that, an issue that we're not ready to make a recommendation to the city council yet, because I think this is going to need a lot more study by the city council and by us before we make any such recommendation. So thank you very much.
I would agree and just say that if we're going to allocate, I mean, literally in life, you've got 2 things. You've got time and money, and, time is a precious commodity, to be allocated in any direction. And if we're allocating it, let's make sure that we're doing it for the best overall goal of creating, more housing. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for sharing your time with us this evening. Next up, we have Melanie Griswold. Melanie, are you ready?
I am. Hi there.
Okay, the floor is yours.
So thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to speak to you. Before we begin, please let me introduce myself. So my name is Melanie Griswold, and I became a citizen of San Jose in 2011. I have now married a longtime San Jose resident, and we have 3 young children. In 2012, I was fortunate enough to be able to purchase my own home in San Jose. And at the time, the home was just under 4 times my salary as an entry-level attorney for the county. In 6 years, the value of that home literally tripled. During that time, the salary of county workers increased on average by about 3% per year. Having housing costs triple when salaries only increase by 25% in a community is unsustainable. And while I was also initially excited at the equity that I had built up in my home, the reality is that when we needed to move because our family had expanded, we had to take on a much higher debt load, a much higher property tax load, and a much greater burden. I firmly believe that while my family is admittedly very fortunate, we would have been much better off had prices simply stayed more reasonable. The huge cost of housing hurts all but those who own multiple homes, and all but those who are able to pick up and leave and move elsewhere. It is an unhealthy situation, and one that I've spent a lot of time thinking about how to address. About 4 years ago, I began my journey into land use and city planning as a planning commissioner for the city of San Jose, and I became a real estate broker. In 2020, I moved to a development company as their senior legal counsel development director, and I was focusing on large-scale TOD projects such as the Blossom Hill VTA Signature Project, which includes both 100% affordable building and a market rate rental building. And as of July, I'm now with an independent group focused on smaller infill development that incorporates on-site affordable housing. As a citizen and taxpayer, and as someone who wants a strong community of people who all have a fighting chance at upward mobility, I want to see the city adopt smart policies that will benefit the greatest number of people and that will actually address the housing crisis. Having been at the table now with many developers and having submitted many development, planning, zoning applications to the city and to other communities within the Bay Area, and having run the numbers on big and small projects, I've realized that the California housing supply chain has been broken long before we ever heard of the supply chain problems that are holding up our ports. According to Wikipedia, California ranks 49th among the states in terms of housing units per resident. And it is no wonder that we have the highest cost of housing in the US with those numbers. As Commissioner Tran pointed out, an imbalance in supply and demand will lead to an increase in price. And according to Wikipedia as well, we need 85,000 units per year to keep up with demand to prevent prices from going up. And we need to quadruple production for the next 7 years in order for prices to go down. As long as supply is constrained, prices will go up. I believe that the problem requires more than simply transferring housing to nonprofits. Solving the problem requires putting a lid on rising prices through policies that will increase overall supply at all levels of affordability, and that will create private market incentives to encourage affordable housing to be built on site and integrated into new projects. In the last few years, I think that the state legislature has begun to do just that. They're putting teeth into the RHNA requirements, and cities that are not actually identifying sufficient land that can be developed with housing at all affordability levels will have various consequences that flow from that. But there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. One law that I think is a really great example of how the market can be encouraged and incentivized to provide affordable housing units, and that I think is finally beginning to catch on, is the density bonus law. It is a law that I am personally using on almost all of my projects. And basically what that law is that by providing on-site affordable units, developers will get a variety of benefits, including up to a 50% density bonus and additional units. These additional units are critical to defray the massive cost of land and the cost of entitlements. Also, with the density bonus laws, a developer can request certain financial incentives, such as limiting the number of balconies or other design features that cities require, which are really costly to build and to maintain, and that ultimately take away from the money that could be used to provide on-site affordable units. Another way is providing less parking, which again is really costly. Sometimes I think we have to make a decision. Do we want parking lots or do we want housing? The density bonus law basically makes it easier to add affordable units and for it to pencil out versus simply paying in lieu fees. And I think finally we're starting to see developers actually make the choice to incorporate on-site affordable because it makes sense to their bottom line. And when it pencils, developers will do it, and they will do it without the city or the state needing to spend any money on it. One project that I'm working on, which I think is a really great example of this, is a 1.5 acre site in East San Jose. It's a site that had a single family home. That's it. One single family home on a 1.5 acre site. And initially, without the density bonus law, the city was not in favor of 16 units on the site. But once we incorporated density bonus law, we presented a plan that had 18 duet units. They're all completely identical, at least 2 of which will be affordable to very low income earners. And they will all be designed as entry-level affordable design units because they are attached and they're smaller. So they're just different from your average single family that would be built. I think SB 9 also has some potential, although it will remain to be seen whether the cities will try and frustrate it. But I think bottom line, San Jose does not a bad job as far as other cities within the South Bay and Bay Area, but they could do a lot more than simply follow the state guidance that's encouraging the production of housing and encouraging the production of affordable housing. To Commissioner Tran's point, again, the policies need to be geared towards producing housing at all levels, not just luxury units. When we look at the RHNA numbers and the production numbers, we're doing an okay job of keeping up with our RHNA numbers at the luxury level, but we're doing a terrible job of producing units at these other levels. And there are a number of policies that we could easily incorporate at at very little cost, other than perhaps the cost of studying it through zoning changes and that within the city, that could really improve the bottom line to produce these affordable units, even if they're just affordable by design. For example, maximum density that's defined by dwelling unit instead of by square footage, it encourages larger luxury units because you need to have a certain amount of rent and a certain amount of money coming off of developments to pay for the high cost of land, the high cost of entitlements. And when you have more square footage, that translates into more rent. But if you can have more units, then that may, you may end up with numbers that actually work better. Another thing that in the city we could do is having impact fees be tied to each unit versus having the impact fees be tied to the square footage of the units as opposed to the units, so that you have a studio unit that has the same impact fees as a luxury unit. And just as an example, to put this into context, I was working on a project on South 10th Street. And so it's an affordable by design, it's geared towards workforce housing, probably largely students that would be at San Jose State. And the park fees alone on a 26 unit project that incorporated affordable housing was going to be over $1.6 million. When we have that type of impact fee on a project, it just has to be really expensive and the rents have to be really high to be able to pay for that. That's before you even factor in the land. I mean, on a project like that, you would be looking at well over $3 million, probably $3.5 million before you even start construction. And that's a base cost that's more than what many units cost in many, many other cities. And so it just really seemed very unsustainable. I don't think a policy like Coppa will work as proposed because it doesn't address the root cause of the problem, which is that the wages here are not true living wages. There's inequitable access to credit, and prices of homes are just simply too high for all but the very well off. I believe that first we need to address supply through policies like density bonus law that incentivize the private market to supply a wider range of housing at different levels of affordability. And that we also need to provide assistance directly to qualified individuals, such as loan guarantees, low cost seconds, down payment assistance programs, Section 8 like top ups, other things that can give people a leg up. I have some concerns about Coppa allowing essentially nonprofits to operate as real estate investment trusts as well. And that what is the incentive that is created when we give nonprofits preference to purchase real estate? From personal experience and looking at land and shopping it to various folks, the price that a affordable developer will pay for land is much higher than what a market rate developer will pay for the land, because the cost of that land will ultimately be subsidized by the government. And so there's probably a 20 to 40% difference between what a market rate developer will pay for an unentitled per unit cost versus a affordable developer. And I think that when we have these programs like Coppa, where we give nonprofits a leg up over market rate, you might see some skewing of the market that may have some unintended consequences that we're not thinking about. But more broadly, given the cost of real estate here, the Coppa program to succeed will require just a huge amount of capital. And I wonder where this will all come from. Is it going to come from more impact fees that increase the cost of housing? If so, this seems like it's taking from the right hand to give to the left hand. Will it come from diverting funds away from state programs like the tax credit allocations that fund the construction of new 100% affordable housing? If so, again, it seems like we are taking from the right hand to give to the left hand, and perhaps even making the problem worse, because programs like the tax credit allocations actually construct new housing, whereas a Coppa program, while you are creating more deed restricted housing, you're also transferring that housing from the market to deed restriction. You're not creating anything new. You're not addressing a supply problem there. I think what a lot of people may or may not know is that there are a lot of, especially the duplexes, the fourplexes, the sixplexes, the garden style apartments that are de facto affordable. And I don't mean affordable in the sense that they are in fact affordable, because $2,000 or $2,200 for a 2-bedroom apartment is really not affordable to very many people at all. But if you look at the Santa Clara County rent limits, the affordable limits are actually higher for the 80% AMI, certainly the 100% AMI, than many of the market rents that are actually being charged for, especially for those duplexes, fourplexes, sixplexes, eightplexes. I manage a number of properties, and we on these properties are able to rent them to Section 8 tenants, and the Section 8 rent sometimes is more than what the market yields. The Section 8 tenants come in and they're willing to actually offer more than the market rate tenants would be able to offer, because of those because of the rent limits here, which are tied to the area median income, and the area median income being so high that it just does skew those rents. So that's another concern that I have, is really, are we going to actually see the rents go down, or are we just going to see them be basically de facto market rate rents with a transfer of ownership from market to nonprofit? I would respectfully suggest that providing microloans or insuring loans so that people with less than perfect credit can qualify for financing, especially when their rent payments are the same as what their mortgage would be, is a better way to provide direct assistance to those in need and to promote stability and upward mobility. And that it ensures that the money is not lost in the machinery of trying to do something positive. I think that we need to address supply, and that we need to do so in a more nuanced way that encourages affordable housing units to be built. And there are plenty of tools that could actually have the private market through a carrot and stick process, the inclusionary housing ordinance being one of them, to actually have affordable housing units start to be built and incorporated into new construction.
All right, thank you, Melanie. We will open it up to questions now. I see Commissioner Tran and Commissioner Monley. Commissioner Tran?
Thank you, and thank you for being here, Ms. Griswold. So a few comments. First, some of the ideas you presented are quite reasonable. Density bonuses, direct subsidies, how we allocate impact fees. Have you been part of these conversations with the San Jose Housing Department about how these policies get presented, proposed, and formulated?
Have I had any conversation with the housing department, do you say?
Yes, the housing department is actually currently considering all of the proposals you mentioned. And so, they're eminently reasonable. I do believe that a density bonus is phenomenal. We actually do have direct subsidies already through Measure A, which is a great program, I believe. And, we're looking, and I'm also a member of the Housing Commission, we're looking at how impact fees are assessed as well. So it's all eminently reasonable. And I'm just wondering if you've been a part of the conversations with the housing department about how these policies look and how they can be crafted.
I really haven't. I was on the General Plan Commission, and I had raised some of these these ideas before. I know a lot of staff really is coming through the state right now, the impact fee allocation to requiring it to be proportional to the square footage, I think is actually a law that will come into effect January 1st. And I guess what I'm seeing is really that the state is coming with some of these pushes to encourage affordable housing, but the cities are only just reacting to them and implementing, and they're implementing it at the minimum. They're not saying, okay, density bonus is a really great way, we're going to give 80% density bonus. They're saying we will follow the state law and that's it, you know, and which is okay, but it's not really moving the ball forwards. And I know there's some support for down payments, but it seems, I work with some buyers, I'm also a broker. I don't work that much as a real estate broker, but it doesn't seem like those policies, if they're available, are not covering enough of the down payment. If there's a down payment assistance, it's $5,000 or $10,000, and the reality is a down payment on a median house is $200,000. And even if you save $3,000 a month, that's going to take someone 6 years to save that money. So, I mean, I know that a lot of people that I feel like are successful, they're double income lawyers, are really struggling. And I can only imagine if they're struggling, how are people who are less fortunate ever going to get there?
Absolutely, yeah. But all the ideas that you presented, though, do you see any inherent conflict between density bonuses, direct subsidies, how impact fees are assessed? Do you see any inherent conflict between that and a proposal like Coppa, which, as was mentioned, it is a real estate transaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems to me that we've got a pot of money, and if the money is going to be put towards subsidizing nonprofits to purchase affordable housing or basically convert it into affordable housing, that we have to spend that money well, in the same way the tax credit allocation committee has to spend the money well. And where I think it makes the most sense is at the larger apartment buildings, because you can, for less money per unit, you can convert more housing into affordable housing. And also you can take, especially at the sort of more luxury apartment level, you are truly taking it from the higher end and moving it into the lower end. Whereas if you take those garden style apartments, you're not going to be changing the rent that much on it, but yet you're going to be spending a lot of taxpayer money to not move the needle on that housing. So I would say Coppa is not bad as a potential policy, especially if you can make a big impact through focusing on 20 unit buildings or 25 or 100 unit buildings, where you can't build them for the cost to build now is so expensive that I think you can actually purchase it for less money than you can build it. So, instead of giving the tax credit dollars to build these units at $750,000 a unit just to build them, you can have it converted to affordable right away. And so there's a huge benefit also in the terms of the timing.
All right. So, I mean, it sounds like where there might be a conflict is just if there are any subsidies for a qualified nonprofit to do a purchase, then the conflict is we can use the money in other ways.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think that there's any problem, although I think, I don't think that there's any problem. I think there's some incentive problems potentially for putting it towards nonprofits that maybe they're not quite as nonprofit as we would like them to be, or at least with some organizations, but that it's really that we need to spend our money more wisely, and that can be on these larger, bigger bang apartment complexes.
Okay. So, but where the San Jose proposal is currently at, there is no proposed subsidy for Coppa purchases. Right. I mean, it's still in the formulation phase.
Yeah. And I guess if we're going to have a policy, though, we have to, before we put a policy that is impossible to implement, the money would need to be there to actually allow nonprofits to purchase the funds. Like the funds has to come from somewhere.
Right. And there are entities that do help fund nonprofit purchases and developments, right? Like the Housing Trust.
True, but I mean, when they have, $150 million from Apple and a apartment building complex transaction is $100 million, that doesn't go very far. So, I mean, if you are looking at single families or duplexes, let's say we took even like $1.5 million per building or $1 million per building, that's only 100 buildings. It's not that many people that you're helping. Like I think the funds need to be leveraged, and focusing on larger transactions is a better way to use those funds.
Sure. And but where we're at though, in terms of comparing Coppa to the policies you presented, there is no set idea or proposal yet that says Coppa is going to be funded in this way. All the idea at their level at this stage in the policy formulation is simply the idea that a qualified nonprofit gets the right of first refusal for purchases.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's no inherent conflict, except that I would prefer to see the person benefit from it be like the actual tenant, or the actual the title is not with the nonprofit, the title is with the tenant.
So Coppa.
Yes.
Okay.
I would be much more in favor of something that provided tenants with a right of first refusal. They're the people that are going to be displaced potentially from a sale. They're also the ones that the owners can directly speak to before a sale and give them that right of first refusal. And that the direct assistance is a more efficient way of transferring potential wealth to tenants.
Well, so how do you, supporters of Coppa and people who, pushed Coppa have presented the need for this policy based on the failure of the market and based on the failure of just general developers to produce affordable housing. And the example that we can point to in San Jose is the 2009 period, right? In North San Jose, there was a lot of new development that was going to come up. And then and the lawsuit went all the way to the California Supreme Court that said, hey, the way San Jose has its policy written cannot be enforced, right? In terms of requiring a certain amount of affordable unit production. So while the policy was being reformulated and it was on appeal, the North San Jose developments had free reign to develop as much as they wanted and do whatever they wanted. And the amount of affordable housing that we got out of that was negligible, right? It was basically like, why even count it? So the justification is, instead of relying on a developer or on a buyer to go ahead and build affordable housing as some kind of courtesy, hand the property over to a nonprofit whose only function would be to convert it to affordable housing, or do something else on it, but geared towards the idea of we're building affordable housing. So that's the justification for Coppa. And how do you believe that gets addressed here if we just continue to rely on the market or rely on developers to produce affordable housing, which, to be blunt, they have clearly failed to do?
They have failed to do under the old policies, but there's a lot of factors to that. I mean, North San Jose also, the city had a policy where there was an allocation of residential housing units. And so for many, many years, there was no more housing units that could be built in North San Jose. A lot of developers would have built housing units in San Jose. Now, granted, they might not have included affordable housing. But the city has done a good job, I think, of enhancing their inclusionary housing ordinance. It just went through an update. And then you layer that on with the incentives that come from using density bonus. And then suddenly the calculation starts to shift. And I think there's an old guard of developers who say, no, we're just going to pay the in lieu fee. But when you really start to look at, okay, you're paying an in lieu fee and that's just gone, versus you can provide an on-site affordable unit, you take a small loss or you take a large loss on it, but you balance it out, at some point, the numbers look better for putting it into the project. And you have to create that incentive to put it into the project. And if you do that, and the state is starting to do that, it will be built. And we're seeing, I think, more projects incorporating that. And it's not just because of the financial incentive of not paying the in lieu fee, the density bonus laws make it a lot easier to move through the entitlement process, which is a complete nightmare. It takes forever. You end up with multiple rounds of comments that have all these changes at the last minute. I mean, it's just a very difficult process. And like some of the bonuses, like for example, SB 35, which allows for streamlining, is a huge benefit to bypass CEQA, to bypass all of the discretionary review. But the problem with SB 35, you have to provide 50% affordable. And that could be worth it in certain developments, 50%. So it's a pretty good number, and it could be worth it. And there's developments that I know that would do it, but the properties where you can use it on are so restricted that not that many sites qualify. So, I mean, there's ways to make it easier, and where people could say, for example, if you had an SB 35 project you work with and a large enough site, you could have an on-site affordable developer who provides the affordable building, the market rate provides their market rate units, they get the benefit of the streamlined process, and the affordable person does too. And the numbers can work, there needs to be a carrot and stick approach.
It sounds like, so you're saying that there's a new guard ready to build affordable housing as long as the incentive is given to them.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a whole bunch of units that are in the mix, and yes, and there's a lot of people that I'm working with who are ready to do those because the numbers work.
Okay, so they haven't done it yet. They just want the right incentives.
They have not done well. I think there are some units that are being built with density bonus, but it hasn't been as much.
Okay, right. I mean, and I go back to the point that I made earlier with Mr. Henshaw, right, which is when we look at our goal of producing 25,000 units, 15,000 of which are market rate, 10,000 of which are affordable, we have far exceeded our goal for market rate production under the rules that we had and even tweaked over the past 4 or 5 years, but are still failing. We're dragging far behind on our affordable housing production. So that's still hard for me to believe, to say that we should just say, hey, let's just trust developers to do the right thing at the moment. Now, one last question though for you before I relinquish my time here. What is your stance on opportunity housing?
I think when on the larger units, it's fine. I mean, those transactions take a long time. They take a long time to negotiate. They have long closes. They can afford the time and additional ability to give nonprofits a look at it. And I think there's a better bang for the buck for offering those properties up to nonprofits. Like, I think that San Jose should have strongly considered the GPA on the moderate income housing. That was a sort of a missed opportunity to be able to convert some of the luxury apartment units to moderate income housing, and that Coppa is really just potentially another version of that. But it makes more sense to sort of put that regulation and that step there when you're talking about 50 units or something or above.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melanie, for sharing your evening with us. Our last speakers are Jackie Rivera and Andrea Portillo. Jackie and Andrea, are you ready?
Yes. We had prepared a presentation, but now we're like, maybe we don't really need it. But up to y'all if y'all want a change of scenery and looking at something else. But if not, we'll just jump right in. Although it sounds like there's been a lot of conversation already on Coppa. We'll do quick introductions. My name is Jackie Rivera. I'm with the South Bay Community Land Trust, and I'll pass it over to my co-presenter.
Hey everyone, Andrea Portillo with Somos Mayfair.
Awesome. So we wanted to, come today to share a little bit more, especially from the community side of Coppa and groups that have been working on it as well, along with the city, right? But with tenants and with community. And so sharing a little bit of that background. First of all, as we mentioned from our organizations, we are folks that are advocating for preservation strategies and community-driven alternative housing solutions that redefine land use and development in San Jose, really seeing preservation and land acquisition strategies that are critical elements of anti-displacement policy. And, as we've heard even earlier in one of the first presentations, can produce limited equity and homeownership opportunities, especially for low and moderate income residents. And really recognizing as well, like the historical, housing segregation policies and even current, exclusions of folks, not only due to race, but also just economics and all of that, and really taking that into consideration when we're looking into, equitable, community-driven housing solutions. Because what's happening now with the housing market isn't working, and especially for those that are most impacted. I'll just share real quick. We're not going to dive too much today into what a CLT is, a community land trust, but we are the first community land trust here in the South Bay, in San Jose, and the region. And so what we do, we're a nonprofit organization, that's led by community that acquires land and stewards it in perpetual trust for the benefit of low-income communities for generations to come. It's not only for housing, that is what we're focusing on now, while also looking at what other community needs come up. And then, passing it on to Andrea for a little bit more context.
Yeah, so we wanted to share, before we dive in, I mean, it's pretty clear that most of you all know what Coppa is, but we wanted to just provide a little bit of context as to how Somos and some of our other community partners, what role we've been playing in this process, as well as the city is developing a framework for this policy. So as most of you know, the city adopted 12 anti-displacement strategies, and Coppa, the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, is the third strategy of those 12. And Somos Mayfair has been supporting the community engagement and education piece of this work. And along with several of other community partners, this summer we hosted 5 Coppa education, learning, and input sessions, including one in Vietnamese, to both educate communities on this policy, what this policy could mean for our communities, and as well as gather input on key aspects of the policy. We really wanted to hear from community around some key specific aspects of the policy, to get their input, to hear their thoughts, to hear what are some of the most immediate needs that community has identified. And before we dive into what those key policy priorities are that we've identified with community, we just wanted to share a little bit more about this policy. So as most of you know, Coppa is a law that allows qualified nonprofits, including community organizations, to make an offer to buy a property when it goes up for sale. It increases opportunities for nonprofit partners, such as the Community Land Trust, South Bay CLT here, and other affordable housing developers. And so the goals for this policy are really, because it's an anti-displacement policy, it is just that, right? To prevent displacement of our most impacted communities, to stabilize housing, maintain affordability, permanent affordability. And I think most importantly, and what we've heard from community, is really just maintain community ties, as well as building assets and economic empowerment of tenants and communities. And then finally, and because we've heard this from community, really a really key important aspect that I'll speak to a little bit later, is creating a pathway for home ownership opportunities for very low and extremely low income residents. I'll pass it back to Jackie to just give us a little bit more about how Coppa works, and then we can dive in to those priorities that we've identified.
Yeah, and it won't take too long on how Coppa works, since it seems like folks are pretty familiar, but just like the key 4 steps, that we've been talking about is that, a property that's already, the owner has already decided to sell, right? They are making this decision to put their property on the market. And so, but Coppa first puts in place that, they notify qualified nonprofits, organizations, and tenants. We've kind of heard here TOPA and Coppa, focusing on Coppa, but really centering tenant engagement and tenant involvement in this process in San Jose. And so we do put in there like qualified nonprofits and tenants. The community organization, with the input and engagement from tenants, decides to purchase the property. The city and community organizations find funding and provide technical assistance, education, and training to tenants and their organizations that are purchasing. And then, you know, the ultimate goal again for tenants not to be displaced for these properties that are already in our communities that, as we heard earlier, too, kind of de facto affordable can remain even more affordable and for future generations. Making very clear here too that Coppa, it's kind of helping level that playing field with purchasing timelines and funding that make it possible for tenants and qualified nonprofits to organize, negotiate a contract, secure financing, and close the deal. Just because, I mean, in this area, it's very fast moving, the real estate market, where it's nearly impossible to compete, coming from, you know, this stance in the open market, where there's either cash offers or just more simple financing terms and shorter closing timelines. Again, you know, I think folks have heard in this space as well, like at the end of the day, the owner does have that right to decide to sell to that qualified nonprofit or not. Yes, you know, the first right of refusal, giving an opportunity to be able to match that if they decide to go with another offer, you know, still being able to allow the qualified nonprofit and tenants to match that. But again, at the end of the day, they can decide who they want their buyer to be. And really also focusing on, you know, yes, timelines are going to be longer, but if we're also focusing on communities and those most impacted, we need to be going also at the pace of community and allowing that time. If we are talking about, you know, tenant empowerment and just an overall long-term stability of community and neighborhoods, then, you know, being able to provide that and you know, looking into what incentives can be put for property owners to want to participate in this type of program, right? Like the city, everything's still draft form, but, you know, is looking into what incentives can be implemented to kind of off balance, yes, the longer timelines. So I do want to make that note, as well as exceptions that are being proposed, just as what was shared earlier with, you know, 1031 exchanges and all of that. Yes, we have been, of course, looking into the two most prominent examples, which is the TOPA policy in DC, as well as the Coppa in San Francisco, as well as talking to all the other groups in the California that are looking at it, from, you know, LA County to here closely in Berkeley and in Oakland, and really recognizing that, seeing, you know, preservation being lifted up a lot more, preservation hand in hand with anti-displacement and those 3 Ps of production and protection. And so I won't dive into, like, you know, what the different ones for Coppa in San Francisco and TOPA in Washington, but just also sharing that, yes, we looked into those and kind of used those as kind of frameworks or time, you know, points for in the community forums to share, you know, these are kind of like what's when working here, these is, you know, what they're spending on in terms of funding, because we do, and I think we'll be emphasizing that a lot, like we can't make this policy as impactful as can be if there's not funding attached to it. And funding not only for the acquisition and subsidies, but kind of hand in hand with what has been talked about here too, is capacity building for qualified nonprofits, for, you know, tenants that are being engaged in this process as well, because in this area there isn't you know, community development corporations, CLTs, all of this, like that. This is something completely new as well. And so needing to build up that infrastructure and needing to see that kind of capacity building support and funding and technical assistance as well, from city and from other partners in the area, you know, folks that have like affordable housing developers that have a lot more experience in this. And again, looking into, you know, things that we were considering, which Andrea will go much more into what the community priorities are, but tenant engagement, looking at existing housing stock. So what is, you know, here in San Jose, nearly 2/3 of San Jose's existing rental market or housing stock is small site units with 19 units and less. So that is a huge, that's really key to also kind of notice like where to center this policy as well, because it is small site properties that are being most impacted by displacement and just, you know, other market forces. And then last but not least, again, setting a timeline that is realistic for that balances the needs of qualified nonprofits and tenants.
Thank you, Jackie. So based on, the learning that we've done, we've looked into some other policies, the ones that Jackie mentioned, and also just considering, I think, the landscape of San Jose. Um, I just wanted to say the main thing that we heard from tenants and community right away when we started doing our community forums was why Coppa and not TOPA. And the main reason why we're supporting this policy is because we understand, to Jackie's point earlier, that there is not a big tenant unionization culture here in San Jose. There's not really a big infrastructure and ecosystem for these alternative housing models and solutions. So this is a very new policy for San Jose. And we also know how expensive real estate is. And so it's unlikely that tenants would be able to get the capacity that they would need to be able to really purchase these properties. And so Coppa, so we say Coppa, but definitely we're weaving in some TOPA language and some TOPA, some TOPA language in there, because we really, really believe in the importance of tenant engagement, empowerment, opportunities for ownership, and really just decision making over people's housing. I think people are the sense of urgency is there, and folks are tired of kind of being left out of these conversations in terms of their housing situations. And so how do we empower folks to be able to have that? And so after, hosting our community forums in the summer, doing some education around what this policy is, we put together some community priorities that we identified with community. The first one being, of course, we know for this program to be successful, it is going to need a steady funding source. And as this policy framework and is being developed, I think it was alluded to earlier that it's going to require a diversified funding source. But we know that in order for it to be successful, a steady funding source is going to be really important, not only to be able to support the qualified nonprofits that are actually purchasing, but I think even making sure that tenants, landlords are educated, they're receiving technical assistance. This is, like I mentioned, a brand new program, and it's going to take a lot of education and learning and unlearning for this program to be successful. So it's going to need that capital resource and resources. We also heard a lot from community, the importance for including tenant ownership opportunities. And so we're strongly pushing that this program and policy include some language around tenant ownership opportunities, be that through an alternative housing model like a co-op, or other models that I think the city is also exploring in terms of tenant ownership. I think another priority that we really heard from community was just that through the Coppa process, as qualified nonprofits are purchasing buildings, again, because this is an anti-displacement strategy and a preservation strategy, obviously we want to make sure that there's no displacement of current tenants as they're going through a Coppa program. Like I mentioned, the really, really important for tenant and landlord, and I think in general for community to be really educated and engaged throughout this process, again, including education, technical assistance, resources, and any additional support that folks may need in order to be really knowledgeable about this program, and again, to be able to have a say and some decision-making power in what's happening with folks' housing. Obviously, we want this program to have flexible affordability restrictions, but prioritizing, as we know, very low and extremely low income families who continue to be sort of pushed out and denied access to even affordable, what we consider affordable housing. Because of the housing stock in San Jose, and because we know that a lot of our folks in the community are often living multiple families in one home, we really strongly believe that this program and Coppa program should include all rental units and housing types, and that those are considered under this program. We don't want to exclude folks who, like I mentioned, are currently living in a single family home, in duplexes and triplexes. I think it's worth to ensure that we're not leaving folks out of this program. And then finally, based on the timelines that we've looked at from San Francisco and Washington, D.C., I think, we're really pushing and advocating for a timeline that balances the needs of, again, the qualified nonprofits, but also, again, the tenants, ensuring that there's ample time for tenants to get the education and resources that they need so that they can really be engaged and empowered in a meaningful way through this program. Because that's what we've heard from community. Again, it's just the opportunity to be more engaged and to have decision-making power over their living situations. We were gonna jump into some timeline in terms of policy, but I think you all may have already sort of discussed that. And so we're gonna continue to do some community-based building and education around this policy. We're planning to host a series of other community forums to continue to engage community around what this policy means. And then I think we're anticipating a possible vote at City Council sometime in February, March. And so we're going to continue to do our work around this policy and continue to engage community around this work that we're doing. That's all we had. I think there's some time for questions.
Thank you, Jackie and Andrea. Yes, I see Commissioners Zhao and Fuentes. Commissioner Zhao.
Hi, Jackie and Andrea. Thanks for your time here, first of all. My first question is about that you mentioned you are a land trust. So are you acquiring land or are you acquiring buildings?
At the moment, we're focusing on buildings, so properties. Down the line, we would like to, open up to just land in and of itself, but recognizing, the cost of development is very high. We see that much more down the line. Right now, we're focusing on a pilot project on a building between 4 to 25 units. So again, looking at small site properties.
So 10 to 25
4
units.
4 to 25.
4 to 25. So how many units have you acquired?
Right now, we're speaking, and kind of it goes into some of the dynamics that have been brought up with timelines. We're in discussion with the fourplex in downtown. Again, we're an emerging CLT, very new. We only officially incorporated in 2020, so last year. Building up our infrastructure as an organization, as a nonprofit, is taking some time, obviously. And working with the city as well in terms of like how they can support. We have seen many successful CLTs work very hand in hand with their housing departments, with their city government, and that also requires, again, capital for capacity building and staffing. And right now we're volunteer based. I am a part-time coordinator, so I'm like officially the only staff member. So very much new. So going and just sharing real brief with timeline, for example, the fourplex that we're working with and we're talking to is because the owner is interested in supporting these kind of models and has been super patient with us in this conversation. And so we've been talking to him since I think before July, and we haven't, bought the property yet.
I see. So this is the first one.
Yes.
May I know, is this a on-market or off-market property?
I believe this one is off-market.
Okay, then how do you know that? Did the owner contact you, or somehow you managed to find the opportunity?
Yeah, so with CLTs, I guess, again, being rooted in community, the different ways that we kind of identify properties is we do have a list. Looking through Redfin, I think somebody mentioned earlier the one on 7th Street, the one on 11th, we were looking at those too. So looking through, open sources like that, but then also our community resources. And so this one came through a relationship that knew somebody that knew the owner, knew that he was thinking of selling. And so that's how we got in contact.
I see. So it seems like without a policy, you're still able to found a off-market property, and right. So yeah, we're not because we don't have it yet. So you're still able to found something, which is good. Congratulations. So you seems like you found a way. There are loopholes, there are red things, even all the owner, there are public record that you can ask for all the owner list. So maybe I would suggest you, send marketing letters to the owners, say, hey, I'm interested in your property. Would you like to sell to us? We have this 1, 2, 3 incentives that would help you find opportunities. That's just my suggestion. So after you acquire it, let's say that fourplex, are you gonna keep it?
The goal is, and again, conversations with tenants. And in the case of this fourplex, the tenants are folks that are subsidized through a veteran dash program. So, and they are not interested in, we're talking to them around the different options with the CLT. You could have, home ownership opportunities or just continue as a rental. And for these folks, they're considering just continuing as a rental.
I see. So you will continue to have those tenants, and they are on voucher, and they probably are paying the fair housing rents.
Yes.
And do you have any property manager on your team?
Not yet, no. And again, going back to what we're building up in terms of capacity and seeing, what are the needs that we have as well.
So your volunteer will run for it?
Right now, we haven't figured all of that out. We're also trying to see, different models for tenants to also be the ones that are involved in the property management. And yes, I do want to say, like, the CLT, for example, will continue to do its work in this manner, but really focusing behind Coppa and other preservation strategies, other preservation policies, because we do see a need for just more of these opportunities. We're only one organization, and there's so many.
I get that. And you mentioned quite often for displacement, and this is a policy that target to prevent that, prevent a massive displacement, if I would say. So are you familiar that San Jose has a Tenant Protection Act? Ordinance. That ordinance basically does not allow any new owner after they buy apartments to let the tenant go or raise their rent above the threshold. So I'm just wondering what kind of massive displacement you're talking about, and do you have any data?
I might pass this one more on to Andrea, since you've been working closer with the...
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think there's a lot of data that has shown specific areas around the city of San Jose that are really at risk or are already experiencing really high levels of displacement. And I can point you to, I can find the source that we've been using in terms of mapping, but it's a really big report that came out recently, or maybe 2 years ago, that has come out through, I think it's the Urban Displacement Project through Berkeley. And so they have identified key areas in the city that are already and/or are at risk or are already experiencing really high levels of displacement. And we see it every day in our communities, right? We hear a lot of our families, a lot of our folks that are having to leave their communities, having to move to the Central Valley, even to other states. And so we've used data, that sort of data, to support in terms of our data for displacement. And we see it every day in our communities of folks being displaced.
So you're talking about displacement equals to a tenant voluntarily move out, or you're talking about a landlord who send notice and force the tenant to leave?
I would say both. I think there are systemic issues that force folks to have to leave their communities. Again, threats of eviction, high cost of living, and we have heard many stories of folks who are getting pushed out by their landlords, and or their properties go up for sale and change hands, and they get displaced because those apartments get sold for market and get developed into market rate apartments.
Yeah, all right. Now, I guess what you mentioned is what we call the Alice Act, which was passed in San
Commissioner Zhao,
Jose.
I'm gonna ask that you wrap up your question. 'Cause
Okay.
We have two more
Yeah,
commissioners
Yeah,
behind you,
I
please.
need one more minute. So Alice Act was passed in 2017 in San Jose that said that landlord can quit. And after they sell, they can quit the market and ask all the tenants to leave. Then I pulled some data in front of me. In the past two years, there are only about a handful unit. The tenant will
Commissioner
ask
Zhao,
to leave.
do you have a question?
I do. I wanted to know the data that the massive eviction displacement that happened in San Jose, because we have a rent registry. There are data there. So I'm not sure what we're talking about here relating to displacement, massive displacement.
And I think if it would be helpful, we could probably submit some data and some research that has already done showing levels of displacement, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fuentes, and then Commissioner Amador.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Andrea and Jackie, and for your presentation and your knowledge and your work that you're doing in the community. I just have a quick question. You mentioned that you're going to be going before the City Council, I think in February. Can you tell us just very briefly about the proposal that you're going to be presenting, or the City Council will be considering? Thank you.
Yeah, so we've been working with the city, through the city's process, but the policy formation really has two tracks. It's the city's housing department is working on their framework and has their process. And what we're doing is really, is again, the community education and input sessions, because we're place-based, because again, we really value the community voice. We've been developing our community version of this policy. And so the policy will include a little bit more specifics on some of the priorities that we identified towards the end of our presentation. And really the strategy is to push a very strong community-driven policy, because we know that we might not get all of that. All of those priorities might not come out of the city's framework. And so we're trying our best to align our frameworks as much as we can, but understanding that we're going to push a really strong community and tenant-centered policy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Amador, and then Monley.
Great, thank you. And I just want to thank both Andrea and Jackie for being here and really, presenting on Coppa. And I don't have any questions. I do want to refer Commissioner Zhao to my memo, which has a lot of sources regarding data on displacement, specifically here in San Jose. So I do, for any other commissioner, want you to take a look again at my memo, take a look at those sources. They are there. And if any more sources are needed, I will be happy to also direct you to them. Thank you.
Commissioner Monley?
Yes, thank you. Andrea, I'm just wanting to check on something that you had said, you'd also like to see this extended to single family homes. Is that correct? I thought I heard you say that.
Yeah, under our priorities that we've identified with community, we're going to strongly advocate that all rental units are considered under this policy.
So if someone has a home, say a couple owns a home for that they're renting out and they want to sell it, they would have to go and do the off-market process they would not be able to sell their home, their rental home, without going through the Coppa program, which is to offer this first to a nonprofit, wait an unspecified number of days at this point for the nonprofit to actually respond, do their investigations, and then there's another unspecified number of days off market that that nonprofit would be able to purchase this property, this single family home, or let's say a duplex, single family home or a duplex, before they could put it on the open market. And these unspecified number of days could be 40 days, 25 days, 40 days, unspecified. And then once it does get to the market, if this doesn't fly with the nonprofit, then once it does get to the market, a nonprofit has, this specified nonprofit has the opportunity to match an offer that comes from an open market buyer for whatever value it is. And they have an unspecified at this point number of days to be able to respond whether they would like to match that offer or not. So this is extending a market period out for possibly 50 or 60 days. You know, I mean, we don't know. We really don't know those numbers, but this is, you know, a single family home doesn't house a lot of people, first of all. And, you know, I mean, we're really talking about doing a huge project for properties that may not be appropriate for this. Not that I really know that the city knows yet which properties would be appropriate.
Commissioner Kamanli, do you have a question?
I did. I asked it.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't clear on the question. Was it?
Yeah.
Just
well, I was asking about
process?
This being single family homes, and I did kind of, you know, ad lib on that a bit, but I'm wondering what you knew about how this would affect that particular part of the market. What do you know?
Yeah, and I think again, we're looking to community guidance for why we would like that all rental units should be considered under this property, and also considering housing stock for the city of San Jose. Mm-hmm. We know that a lot of our communities are living more than one family in one home. And so the purpose around including a single family home is, again, to not leave folks that are in that certain situation out of this program and not given the opportunity to take advantage of this policy in terms of preserving affordability for folks. So that is the reason why we're advocating for all units that they be considered under this policy.
So if the nonprofit kept the single family home to rent out, they have control over that property, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions from commissioners. So thank you so much, Jackie and Andrea, for joining us this evening and sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and with the wrap up of that presentation, it is time for public comment.
I have a comment question.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Fuentes.
I had my hand up before we go to public comment. I just want to know, when will we be getting either the recording or the video of this study session, or the written transcripts? When will that be ready so that we could use it to continue working on recommendations? Do we know? Is Megan able to answer that, or?
The recording will come up shortly after we adjourn. So probably by tomorrow morning, we assume.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I believe we are ready for public comment.
Okay, Green Foothills.
Good evening, Brian Schmidt here for Green Foothills, Legislative Advocacy Director for Green Foothills. And I was relieved to hear at the beginning of today's session that the reason why this session is agendized as studying Article 19 is because that is where housing issues are discussed within the charter. I sent you a letter yesterday expressing concerns from the environmental perspective that weakening Article 19 in the open space protections, Article 19, would weaken protections on behalf of environmental equity and inclusion interests. And I included a letter from 27 community leaders expressing how important open space protection was for Coyote Valley in particular. So far in today's discussion, I haven't seen anything indicating that there's an examination of weakening those protections. And I did look forward to the Saturday discussion that you'll have and the 10 recommendations that are posted there. I saw that none of them also proposed weakening Article 19. So all that is really good from the environmental perspective. I can tell you a number of environmental organizations and individuals were very concerned when we saw this come up on the agenda. What I would like to suggest moving forward is if you're putting housing, additional housing on the charter, that you do what was proposed in draft recommendation number 10, which was to create a new article about housing. And within that draft recommendation number 10, they were very specific that those recommendations for rezoning did not include the lands protected under Article 19. So these might be some ways to just keep doing what you're intending to do and not interfere with the really important environmental protections that the voters passed in 2018, which is what Article 19 is. That is the Measure C that was passed by 61% approval by the voters in 2018. Thank you very much.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for the item tonight. I guess, maybe in our future, when you have many speakers at one time, if you have like over 4, like 6 or 8 or 10, after the first 2 or the first 4, the first 5, maybe, halfway through, you can have public comment time and then offer public comment time after the remaining public speakers. Or draft recommendation items is another way to, I've been considering this with the redistricting issues. What else was I going to say? Thank you for these items. I'm really into the ideas of mixed income for our future. I think there's a flexibility there that can do something really amazing. And for all income levels and for all people, within a neighborhood. And I'm really hopeful about that stuff. It was mentioned by the first speaker about the importance of affordable housing issues and Title 19 things. I hope we're not afraid of, there's been some pretty heavy memos by City Manager McGuire and Vice Mayor Jones. I hope that hasn't scared us and limited us in how we can talk about issues. There's incredible issues of green sustainability within affordable housing, and then how that relates to, say, neighborhood equity and how that relates to Ohlone issues. There's a real important connection that we can make that I hope we're not afraid of. And hopefully in our remaining days, we can be able to talk about it more. I had a few other things to say. Gosh darn it. You can probably get the YouTube of this meeting tonight, almost immediately after this meeting tonight. Thank you.
Roma Dawson.
Thank you. I won't repeat the comments made by Brian Schmidt, but I was one of hundreds of volunteers that worked very hard in 2018 on Measure B and Measure C. And I was absolutely terrified at the thought of modifying it. I will also add that I am a colleague of Commissioner Huitren on Housing and Community Development Commission. I learned a lot tonight. I want to thank you for listening, but respectfully, I believe some of the things like this you're considering putting into the city charter are not appropriate for the charter. They're just not. And I hope that you will make some strong policy recommendations to council. For example, the one we're talking about right now, Coppa
and look at making policy recommendations and ask that they be placed on the city's roadmap for future consideration, rather than trying to solve all the woes of San Jose in one fell swoop. I want to thank you for your commitment of time. I'm blown away every time I listen to a meeting about your dedication and hard work. Thank you.
Anil Babar.
Thank you, Anil Babar. I want to echo some of the concerns that were expressed on Coppa. You know, San Jose had an opportunity, as was mentioned, to really increase its affordable housing supply through partnerships like Cal CHA, and they missed that opportunity. You know, what we haven't heard from Coppa proponents is why the current system of making offers precludes them from competing. You know, as was mentioned by Michael Henshaw, there are many properties on sale at any given time, and they take many weeks, if not months, to close. There's plenty of opportunity to do this without enacting a whole new bureaucracy to slow the process down. You know, we heard from CLT on bidding on properties. You know, I think the city should really be focusing on providing, if they have the funding, providing the funding to these organizations to make these offers now, rather than waiting for Coppa to pass. You know, frankly, I think we here have also spoken to the community. We've also heard from the community that there are problems with Coppa and they don't want it. And so I urge this committee to really think about Coppa and really think about, is there a necessity for this policy, or are we just trying to find a solution to a problem that hasn't been found yet? Thank you.
Back to the chair.
Sorry, couldn't find my mute button there. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I would like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that the Charter Review Commission will meet next on Saturday, November 6th at 11 a.m. via Zoom for a public hearing. Following the public hearing, the Charter Review Commission will hold its next regular meeting on November 15th, 2021. I will now adjourn this meeting. Have a good evening.